When I play Fast Play Home Run Riches from the Maryland Lottery, I have a chance to win a progressive jackpot that starts at $40,000 and grows from there. So yeah, I'm ready to
play ball!
Make the right call this season and play Fast Play Home Run Riches from the Maryland Lottery.
This episode is presented by Motorsports Incorporated. All seasons for work and play. Visit motorsportsinc.com for more.
Good morning, Baltimore. It is Thursday, May 21st, and thank you for tuning in to the latest episode of the Early Birds podcast. I'm your host, Matt Weyrich, alongside Ravens reporter Sam Cohn, where we are not obviously in the same room here. I am 40 minutes away from having to board my flight back home from Tampa, but Early Birds come first, so Sam couldn't hop on this plane without jumping on with you. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. Tonight you are catching flights, not feelings. I can see there's like a sign above you with some phone thing. It feels like something about I can feel like you're in an airport. This dedication is legit. So it's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm not exactly in a quiet corner. I thought there were some workstations here at the Tampa airport, but evidently not. Did find a table where I don't think I'll be disturbing anybody else, hopefully. So that's my goal.
Do you think you're the first person? No, there's no way. Okay, let me ask this way. How many people in the history of humanity have recorded a podcast in the Tampa Bay airport?
I can't say there's too many. Like, there are some airports that have little cubbies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So probably, I'd say single digits. I'd say I'm in the single digits.
You're part of an elite club. Yeah.
That's right. Podcasters wish they could get to this level of dedication, but here we are as the Orioles just got swept by the Rays in what was a crushing series on pretty much every front. Each facet of the team responsible for an individual loss in this series, starting pitching. Game 1, Game 2 was the offense, and Game 3 was the bullpen. We'll get into all of that, but we're going to touch on a lighter note first here. With Ravens OTAs kicking off this week, we had an open practice on Tuesday. Sam was there. So let's just jump right into it, Sam. What did you kind of see from OTAs? I mean, with it being this early in the offseason program, not a whole lot of X and O's that you can pull out of something like this.
Yeah, I think, it's worth starting with, and we talked briefly about this offline, that talking about Lamar Jackson's availability and presence at optional, again, voluntary practices feels like we're beating a dead horse. It's still worth noting that the QB1 was not there. Are we surprised? Not really. And I think that Jesse Minter handled it well. He said after practice that him and Lamar have been in a lot of constant communication, that Lamar has, quote, a couple of things going on. He expects Lamar to be there. It's not super surprising because there have been several examples of Lamar Jackson not showing up to OTAs and still being his best self come week 1 of the season. It is not something necessarily worry about him. The only reason at this point why we care or we even talk about it is because of what Declan Doyle said at his introductory press conference, which is that if you believe if you see yourself as a championship contender setting championship standards, that work starts now. Now, I guess being May. He said this in January, February, but now being May is when that work really, really starts. Their first chance to really get on the field and be together. It's worth noting that Lamar was at voluntary minicamp. He's been in the building. He's been working out with guys. Again, he's been in communication with the staff, but we would expect Lamar to be there at some point throughout OTAs, probably sooner rather than later. So far, he has not been there this week. And again, Jesse Minter pointed out that that he's been in communication and everything's okay on that front. So I would say we can kind of leave it at that because, again, it does feel like we're beating a dead horse and it's not something we need to really dive too much into. But worth noting always when the number one quarterback, your 2-time, should be 3-time MVP, is not there. And a lot of these guys, as they're learning the playbook with a new offense, are taking snaps with catching passes either from Snoop Huntley, who, as we know, played a couple games last year, or, plenty of Skylar Thompson and a little Diego Pavia and a little of Joe Fagnano.
Yeah, I think it's really just a bookmark for later. of if we get into the season and this offense starts slow, then maybe you point back to, did the Ravens do everything they could? Did Lamar Jackson do everything he could to hit the ground running in this new offense? And we're not going to know the ramifications of something like this until then. But right now, with him having been in the building, as you mentioned, for the start of offseason program, meeting with coaches, things like that, I think being the star caliber quarterback that he is, he's earned a little bit of leeway in that regard. So it's not something that I would necessarily be hammering him on right now as a fan, as somebody who watching from afar. But still, like I said, what this looks like in October is another story.
Matt, you mentioned starting slow. Before we get further into OTAs, I feel like I need to come on here and defend my honor. Need to clear some air, because I don't know if you've seen, but I was getting flamed on the internet. People were going crazy. People were talking all kinds of smack. People were calling me names on the internet. It's crazy. People are crazy.
And why is that, Sam?
When the Ravens released the schedule, which you and Josh did a great job of breaking down and dissecting and talking about what their schedule looks like, the Sun Social put up my predictions based on, we found out the schedule, whatever day that was last week, middle of the week last week. And I guess that was Thursday. And we put out on social my prediction. Now, let me start by saying this. Is my prediction perfect? Probably not. Is there room to be annoyed at some of the games I picked? Sure. Am I always right? Definitely not. However, I think that calling the Ravens anything more than a 10-win team, maybe an 11-win team at this point, feels irresponsible. They were an 8-win team last year. They have an entirely new coaching staff. And I think you could really make the argument that they did not do enough to address several positions, and or at several of those positions, there are still major question marks. If you ask me again in August, and we see a lot of this team and we see how the division starts to kind of figure things out in training camp, then yeah, maybe I kind of change my tone. But as of right now, why do people have so much confidence that this is a 13-win team and a Super Bowl contender? Their over-under's 11.5, and that feels like a reach. I'm taking the under right now. Couple examples. They still don't know who their center is. And as of right now, it's probably Danny Pinter. He's going to be the first guy to get a crack at that starting spot. But why does that inspire confidence? Ronnie Stanley's a year older, all pro, but he's a year older. And Roger Rosengarten, the right tackle, took a step back last year. Venga, we expect to be good, but like that offensive line does not inspire the kind of confidence that I think people should have right now. On the defensive side of the ball, Nnamdi Madubuike, not a guarantee to come back his full self. If you don't have him, what is your confidence level in the interior defensive line with Calais Campbell and Travis Jones to anchor that interior defensive line? Trey Hendrickson hasn't played football in a while. Are we positive he's fully healthy? Could be great. We just don't know. Mike Green, expected to take a step forward. Do we know that? No. Zion Young, it took Mike Green half a season his rookie year to really feel like he was impacting games. Zion Young is probably not going to be able to impact a game in a major way until at least the halfway point of the season. It's going to take at least a month or 6 weeks for him to kind of really get settled and maybe be a game wrecker if he can be in his rookie year. Do we feel all that more confident in the secondary than we did last year? This defense was not good last year. Why do we feel... one more, I guess. Talk about the wide receivers. Last year it was Zay Flowers and everybody else. Are we sure that Elijah Surratt and Jacoby Lane are both going to be contributors in 2026? I think they could both be significant contributors in 27. I think their ceiling is high. And there's certainly a chance that they can be significant contributors. But I don't understand why people have so much confidence as it stands right now that this is the 12, 13-win team that is a Super Bowl contender and competing for a Super Bowl. That can all change. I understand that people are going to call me an idiot, and I understand that people are going to get upset. But, and again, I'll say that, like, are there one or two games that I think I might take back looking at it? Maybe. But I don't think this team comes out hot out of the gates, even though they play 7 teams to start the season that were not playoff teams. It's worth mentioning the Ravens, also not a playoff team last year. They almost made the playoffs because of a Tyler Loop field goal, but they weren't good enough to be a playoff team. So, Matt, I defend my honor a little bit. I still think they're a 10-win team, and I think my mind could be changed in 2 or 3 months, but I was getting just absolutely torn apart on the internet, and people commenting on my old Instagram posts. It's crazy. What are we
Oh,
doing
no.
out here? What are we
Trust
doing?
me. I've
What are we
felt
doing?
some of that. I've felt some of that this year from Orioles fans as well. So it's definitely not an isolated thing. But I would say that for like making win predictions in May is
Yeah.
not from a media perspective, nothing more than a mental exercise, because opinions are going to change as we get closer to the start of the season. More moves are still left to be made. I still think they do something to address that interior offensive line. There's the June 1st cutoff date. Lots of potential for guys to hit free agency who aren't right now. So, the way that the offseason has gone, I think can inspire confidence, but until we start to see what this complete picture looks like, what Jesse Minter's vision looks like on a football field, what the team looks like in preseason, there's a reason that there's all of these boxes to check off before the start of the season. So, you could go out and say they're going to be 0-17 right now, and I don't think you'd be wrong, just because it's just the way the roster, it's an incomplete grade. It's because it's an incomplete offseason. So I'm sorry
Fans should
that
be
you've been
excited.
subject to that, but yes.
I should acknowledge, like, there's reason to be excited about this team. There's reasons to be excited about this staff. There's reasons to be excited about the new voice and changes that have been made. This has been a really, really pivotal offseason for the Ravens, but predicting them to win more than 10, 11 games right now, again, it just feels irresponsible.
I'm pretty sure
with
I
that,
said 10 wins on that episode as well. So I'm right there with you.
Okay, well, if we're right, we'll take a victory lap on the Early Birds podcast in January or February.
That's right.
And I still think that squeezes them into the playoffs. Like, I think they can be a wild card team. Like, the division is not that much better than it was last year. You just have a healthy Joe Burrow, and now we know Aaron Rodgers is going to give it one more go. But that all said, we can move on from schedule stuff, because you and Josh hammered a lot of that. The biggest thing out of OTAs that I want to talk to you about, did you see the end of practice games they were playing, the Jesse Minter be at your best when your best is needed period, he's calling it?
I haven't seen it. My head was buried in the sand a little bit in Tampa down here, but I know you were all over it.
So they ended practice, and OTA practice, you only really see so much. It's no real football, can't really hit anybody, but there's individual drills, 7-on-7, 9-on-7, 11-on-11, et cetera, et cetera. The real pads on doesn't happen for another couple months. But Jesse Minter has instituted, and now we've seen him do, or he's done at least 2 days worth of what he's calling be at your best when your best is needed, period, to end each practice. And that's a phrase we've heard him say pretty much every time he's spoken publicly since he was hired. Whether or not, I'm going to say it's a shot at the Ravens in the latter part of the John Harbaugh years. He's not specifically acknowledging that, but we saw, say, Flowers fumble at the goal line against Kansas City. We saw Mark Andrews drop in Buffalo. We saw Tyler Loop miss a field goal in Pittsburgh after the defense gave up several fourth quarter touchdowns in Pittsburgh. The Ravens have had really, really rough ends to their season, not to mention all the other regular season games that Ravens fans love to talk. What's that graphic that Ravens fans have on social media counting all the games that John Harbaugh's Ravens teams have blown? So Jesse Minter has repeated this phrase of he wants his teams to be at their best when their best is needed. What he's doing with that so far is implementing sort of this game at the end of practice. And again, they're not really doing much football hitting right now. So on Tuesday, that was all the offensive players and coaches on one side and all the defensive players on the other, kind of creating an alley. And then standing on the goal line was two younger players, most of them rookies, and they would chuck a medicine ball, like shot put a medicine ball as far as they could. I think it was Elijah Surratt versus Chandler Rivers. It was Josh Cuevas versus Kaimon Rucker. And then the primetime matchup was Venga Ioane and Zion Young. And the offense swept. But it was a cool moment for them to, like, the way Jesse Minter described it is like he wants to kind of get the competition out of these guys. He wants them to be able to, like, rib on each other. He wants them to get excited, but he also wants to put them in a position that they don't know what's going to happen. That they're at the point where, like, okay, there's going to be something happening at the end of practice, but we don't know what that competition looks like, and you just kind of got to be ready when your number is called to go do it. Obviously, and I put this in my story, like, the Ravens their season is not going to be decided by throwing a medicine ball or what was on Monday a 2-minute plank. Like, that's not going to decide their season. But conceptually, Jesse Minter's working on this idea of having his guys be ready when at the end of a long 2-hour practice in 95-degree heat, someone needs to step up and make a play throw a medicine ball as far as you can. Again, it's not going to win them any games in May, but it's something he's instilling to have them ready for the start of the season.
I mean, it's apt messaging for a group that, has certainly had that problem in the past, and to do it one in a competitive, lighthearted way, I think is a good way to approach it in May as things get ramped up. It's going to be more about, okay, how do we finish drills at the ends of practices? How do we make sure that our last rep is just as good as our first? And it's just basically instilling that kind of messaging and that kind of thinking into the roster, so that, guys aren't showing up for practices and kind of half-assing things, as the practice goes on, because that kind of thing can translate and seep into your play when it gets on the field. And not saying that's necessarily what happened with the Ravens and late in these games, but at the same time, the track record's undeniable. It was a true problem for this team. So that Jesse Minter, whether it's an actual shot at John Harbaugh or not, that he's actually taking this approach to fix what clearly was the biggest thing holding this team back on the biggest stages, it has to be encouraging. So from an OTAs perspective, it's not something I would read into as completely changing the culture overnight. But as you mentioned, it is certainly something that I think players are going to enjoy and start to kind of understand what he's getting at from the day one.
Definitely. And that idea that like the way things ended, that had a lot of influence on Steve Bisciotti's decision to fire John Harbaugh. He admitted as such that like you can't necessarily point the finger at Harbaugh for all of those endings, but and I can't remember off the top of my head, but he gave some stat about, I think it was they led the league in like fourth quarter blown leads or whatever it was. Don't quote me on that, but Steve Bisciotti acknowledged like the way those games ended had a lot to do, and it was a big part of his thought process in firing his friend. And when they hired Jesse Minter, a big part of the messaging was they needed new messaging. They needed fresh ideas and fresh blood. And the big question was, when you have a new coach and a new staff, a rookie head coach at that, how does he come into a historic organization that has all the foundational bricks in place and all these ideas already there and all this lore? How does someone come in and maintain that while also stepping into the future and trying something new and being a little bit different? You could say that this be at your best when your best is needed period at the end of practice, where they play a game or taunting each other doing push-ups, like it's silly and it means nothing. But in the grand scheme of things, if you kind of take a step back, I think to your point, like it's apt messaging for OTAs, and it's Jesse Minter building a culture. We've talked ad nauseum about the idea that he wants these new age Ravens. He wants them to be at their best when their best is needed. We didn't know any specifics for months about what any of that looked like. This is our first chance to say, okay, here is everything that Jesse said in his interview, everything that he said to the media publicly. We're finally seeing that on the field, bit by bit, of what that looks like. Jesse's walking around in a purple hoodie with the sleeves cut off like he's Bill Belichick, with a walkie-talkie and a clipboard, and this is his team now. This is, what is happening in Owings Mills for the next few months to get them ready for this season. This is his product, and we're starting to see him kind of mold this clay to be the team that he wants, and we're going to see little bits and pieces over the coming months of building on his vision and how he plans to put that vision into practice come August and September.
Yeah, and when it's May and there's only one open practice a week to the media, it's breadcrumbs at this point of figuring out what exactly the trickle-down effect is of Jesse Minter's new leadership style and approach to the game. So we'll see what those breadcrumbs compile into as the months goes on. But before we wrap up here on Ravens, Sam, just a couple of notes from what you saw. There was a Derrick Henry injury scare.
Yeah, we'll touch on this real quick. It was, again, OTA is not that exciting. The 11-11 stuff you're watching, the 75% speed. But when number 22 is on the ground, everyone stops. A couple players took a knee. I think everyone in the media along the sideline certainly perked up for a moment to see what was going on. I know I sent a Slack pretty quickly in our Ravens chat, just alerting everyone that something might have happened. But Derrick Henry's fine. Let's start there. It seemed he just bumped knees with someone, but again, you don't want to see that kind of thing happen. Jesse Minter said he held his breath for a moment, but Derrick had joked afterward that, and to Derrick's credit, took like 2 or 3 plays off. He was back in individual drills and then back taking reps. But he said afterward, the ground felt like a bed for a little. And then he saw you guys looking hot and bored. So I was like, I need to give them something to tweet and write about. Derrick Henry showing his goofy side. It's only May. So that was funny. So yeah, he's fine. But that was certainly a little bit of a scare and something that you do not want to see any of at this point in the offseason.
No doubt. I'm glad it was nothing more than bumping knees, which I have done on the football field several times. Does not feel good. So that he got up and got right back to it pretty soon after shows his toughness there for sure. What about Zay Flowers? Definitely a standout player for you?
Yeah, I just think at this point, again, we're looking at backup quarterbacks and a lot of younger guys getting reps, but Zay Flowers, that guy's moving like he's in midseason form. The one play that comes to mind, he had this kind of, I guess it might have been, I think it was an out route. He catches the ball and he does that classic like turn and quick cut where he gets really low to the ground. And he makes a cut past the defender. And I saw Snoop Huntley, who made the pass, like in the backfield, like trying to imitate Zay Flowers, where he like bent down. He's like, and he's kind of doing this like he's pretending to be Zay, which was funny. So yeah, I mean, of all that we saw in that 1-2 hour session, again in the 95-degree heat, Zay Flowers certainly looked like he was ready to go.
And what would you say was the biggest play of the day?
The Robert Longerbeam intercepting Skylar Thompson had to be the biggest one. Robert Longerbeam missed all of last season. Rookie, I guess now going to be second year, missed all of last season with, I think it was a knee injury. And he picked off Skylar Thompson, took it back to the house, and all the DBs in classic form all run down to the end zone and get hyped for him. Funny note about that, though. I'm pretty sure I heard Jesse Minter kind of yelling, next play, next play, next play. Everybody get back. So great to see the DBs hyping each other up. Notable to see Jesse Minter kind of enjoy that for a second and then be like, all right, let's keep it going. Let's keep it going.
Love to hear it. As you said, only one OTA practice open to the media per week. So we will each week here on these probably Thursday episodes talking about what we're seeing at OTA. So Sam, really appreciate the insight there. Let's go ahead and switch over to Orioles right after this.
The Maryland Lottery presents Home Run Legends.
Yeah, I know a little bit about leaving the yard, the backyard.
You too can be a home run legend with Fast Play Home Run Riches from the Maryland Lottery. You'll have a chance to win instant cash, tickets to a game, and more. Please play responsibly.
And we're back, but unfortunately the Orioles are not. They lost all 3 games in Tampa, really in dramatic fashion. The first game getting blown out 16-6. Trevor Rogers really roughed up in that game. The second one, they lose 4-1. Offense just completely disappears in that one, spoiling what was a pretty solid performance from Kyle Bradish. And then on Wednesday, once again, starting pitching looking great with Shane Baz facing his former team and going 6 innings, 1 run. Offense had some timely hits, including not back-to-back, but home runs within a couple of batters of each other by Pete Alonso and Samuel Basayo. They go into the 8th with the lead, and then Anthony Nunez and Rico Garcia both combine to not only surrender the lead, but also hand it over to the Rays, who quickly secure the save and the series sweep. The Orioles are now 0-7 against AL East opponents on the road this year, getting swept in New York and now in Tampa. They overall are 8 games under 500 and now are in a position where 50 games in, with number of losses that they have so far this year, 29 losses in their first 50 games. Only 2% of teams that ended up that had 29 losses or more in their first 50 games went on to make the playoffs. So the Orioles have dug themselves a hole, if not too crazy, because the wild card is still very much within reach because of the rest of the American League. But this team not inspiring confidence with the play that they had this week. And Sam, it really has put them in a position where this team is starting to face questions over whether they really have it at all in 2026, despite all of the roster turnover they had over the offseason.
This feels bleak. This feels like it's really, we're getting close to the cliff if we haven't already. If I'm sure a lot of fans have already jumped off the cliff, but it feels like we're getting close to it because for so much of the season we've had conversations about certain guys being able to turn a corner, and when those guys turn said corner, that will get them over the hump to win these games. And suddenly the Orioles will be closer to resembling the team that we expected them to be. It feels like we've gotten to the point where even when you get a couple of those good performances, Gunnar Henderson gets a couple hits, You get a solid pitching outing from somebody. The bats are working a little bit. Like they can't win the game. Even when you have some things clicking, they can't win the game. And I mean, it's worth mentioning that today on Wednesday, Ben McDonald was on Masson, and I'm not going to read the entirety of his quote here, but he called the analytics of the Orioles struggles quote unquote eyewash. And he said, you either do or you don't. And right now the Orioles don't. And if I can just take that a step further, I got my hair cut today. Thanks for noticing. And there was a guy in the barber. The Orioles game was on when I was getting my hair cut. And the guy next to me getting his haircut and his barber were talking about the Orioles. And in a very similar vein, the guy said something to the effect of consistency is key, and the Orioles have none of that. And again, that's just what it feels like. It's like no matter you get a little bit from them, that doesn't mean that wins them a game. Like that, those couple performances aren't winning them games. Those couple performances are making them respectable losses, if that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something different every day with this team. Like we said, first game, Trevor Rogers gets roughed up. He was their opening day starter and now is seemingly lost. And, in his post-game presser on Monday, I mean, clearly emotional, kind of maybe even holding back tears. He was shoving his hands in his pockets because they kept shaking. And at one point, he was asked, Craig Albertaz has said in his post-game presser that day, that he felt like Trevor Rogers was close. And Rogers was asked, do you think you're close? And he paused for a full 10 seconds before answering the question, saying, I'm just trying to be professional here. And saying that he did believe he's close, but it's clear that he is fighting himself right now. He's fighting, looking for confidence. He's searching for answers that just aren't there. I mean, there's been some speculation that he might be tipping his pitches right now, because even some of the good pitches he made, he had a couple of changeups that were just painting the outside of the strike zone, and the Rays were clobbering them. It's like, do they know it was coming? Who knows? But at the end of the day, Rogers isn't Rogers right now, and that's been a big problem. The offense, had a couple of nice games there. The last game in Washington and then the first game in Tampa, both putting together some solid at-bats, stringing together some rallies, finished with 6+ runs in each of those games. And then they go out on Tuesday, completely fall flat, only a couple of hits there. And then on Wednesday, go 1 for 9 with runners in scoring position. They leave 9 guys on base. I mean, the big hit has been something that's been a problem all year for the Orioles. There were certainly some opportunities wasted on Wednesday to tack on. They only end up scoring 3 runs. It looked like it was going to be enough, but then it's the bullpen. It's Rico Garcia, who had been so dominant for the Orioles all year this year. All of a sudden, he is going through it, having allowed hits in each of his last 3 outings, runs in his last 2. Anthony Nunez, who has been in a high leverage role for them, blowing the save there and allowing the Rays to tie the game. So, Ryan Helsley is still on the IL. There's a lot of injuries for this team, but at the end of the day, they have who they have right now, and it has just not been a winning formula. And it's certainly fair to question what that winning formula looks like. And talking with guys on Wednesday post game, they all talk about how guys are trying too hard. We've been hearing that for a couple of weeks now. It's like, at a certain point, when are you, if you're saying all we got to do is relax and play aggressive, play with our hair on fire, why aren't you doing it? And I think it's fair to wonder when that version of Orioles baseball is going to show up, because, they now have seen firsthand, the Rays and Orioles, the two teams that are at the top of the division, what winning baseball looks like for both of them. They're very different teams in the way they win baseball games, and the Orioles have not been able to compete with either team so far. And I think that is very emblematic and explains why they're last place in the American League East right now.
Matt, there's going to be someone who listens to this podcast while traveling and hear like an airport announcement behind you and think it's for them. That aside, you and John Orand had a really insightful conversation about the state of the ball club earlier this week. When you think about, the Orioles have struggled in Tampa Bay. That's a 2-year-old joke for Orioles fans. But when you think about just kind of where this team is at, like, where do you go from here? Because Mike Elias is running out of levers to pull that can fix this godforsaken roster.
Yeah. They did get a boost this week in Jackson Holiday coming back from the injured list, which was maybe like the one card the Orioles still had to turn in terms of who they have internally. Holiday had multiple setbacks with the hamate bone injury, had it fractured in February, and now ends up missing almost 50 games to start the year. And he's being eased back in still. I mean, he said the other day that he's still dealing with pain in his hand. So not necessarily completely all the way back, but it's a point where, you got to get him in the lineup one way or another. And and they feel like he is at least close enough now to be able to contribute to this team. And not starting against a lefty on Wednesday, and he was pinch hit for Tuesday night for the same reason with the left-hander on the mound. So certainly they're picking their spots with him. But we saw him play an inning at third base in the finale Wednesday. Of course, a ball gets hit to him right away, which was very funny. He handled it very cleanly. But what Jackson Holiday looks like, moving forward right now is going to be huge for this team's success, as I'm talking with another announcement going on behind me. But it is like you do wonder, what can this team do from here to drastically improve their odds? And at a certain point, it's just the guys that they have on the field. There've been some injuries, but for the most part, their lineup is completely intact other than Jordan Westberg. Their rotation, while, missing a Zach Eflin and Dean Kramer and Cade Povich right now, still 5 guys deep with guys that they knew were going to be contributing for this team. They don't have their closer in Ryan Helsley, but, they have a bullpen group that has certainly pitched well in high leverage spots at certain points this year. So they have the ingredients there that have shown they can win matchups, win innings. It's, can they do it for 9 innings in a row? I think the defense has actually even gotten better over the last few weeks. So that has become less of a problem for me. But this is a team that right now, the margin is razor thin, and you've got to take advantage of every little opportunity you get and start to string together momentum somehow, some way.
Yeah, you said it, that they keep saying we just got to go out there and play with our hair on fire. And you can only say that so many times. You just got to go do it. And this team certainly, as we've talked about, like, they have the talent. There are no more come to Jesus meetings, because that's not what's going to change it for them. And I know you and I have talked before about this idea of their culture and how their on-field culture differs from what felt like a really, really established and strong clubhouse culture. It's just not maybe translating to the field. This might be an unanswerable question for us, and something that only they can figure out within the clubhouse or on the field or somewhere within that roster, or maybe it's bringing in someone to just light those guys up. I don't know what it is, but there is a switch within that team that can win ball games and can do what the Nationals did almost a decade ago, and go from, what is it, like the 29 wins to winning
a decade.
19 winning
and
a
31.
World.
Well, yeah, those Nationals started 19 and 31. This team 21 and 29. So only 2 games off of that, all-time record for a team to come back and win the World Series.
Listen, I do not think that is going to happen, but I'm sure it is within this team and within this roster the ability to get close to, like, I'll just say to make the playoffs and to make a playoff run. That feels like an attainable goal, definitely, as it stands. But if something doesn't change now, and I guess I should ask again real quick, because didn't Craig Albertaz say at the beginning of May that, like, he kind of felt like their deadline to turn things around was sort of the end of this month? Like, they had to figure it out by the end of May.
Mike Elias said that he thought they were going to be turning things around in the next month. So it's the trade deadline is still months away before they have to really make any drastic decisions. But yeah, I mean, you can, as we saw last year, you can lose the season in May. You can fall too far behind where it's impossible to pull yourself back out again. Turning the switch from a team that is closing in on 10 games under 500 to one that is capable of making a run strong enough to reach the playoffs is certainly a big question mark. So is a team that is capable of losing like this also capable of winning that way? There's a lot of doubt there, and certainly the players talk about the confidence and everything else, but the fan base it isn't feeling it right now, and then the city and certainly those who are most vocal on social media are calling for changes to be made. And I don't think that this team is going to get drastic right now and make a change in front office or anything like that. I think honestly, you look at Mike Elias's track record of selling at the deadline, it's very good. You might, if you're David Rubenstein, want to make sure you see this season through with Mike Elias, just as he probably gives you the best chance to build for the long term, even if you do end up making a change in the offseason. So we haven't reached that point yet, and I think fans who I hear it all the time on social media, like the media isn't holding, this team, coals to the fire, whatever, feet to the fire, asking the tough questions. One, we are asking the tough questions. And if you actually watch these post-game press conferences, particularly the one Monday night, I think that you'll see that Albernaz and these players are facing questions that are putting them in comfortable positions and having to explain things that maybe they don't have answers to, and that's exposing a problem in and of itself. But also, it's a 162 game season. You build up to these kinds of things. Talking about how do you turn things around, right, is probably the question to be asking in May. But as we get into June and July, are there institutional problems that need to be corrected with sudden and swift changes? That's when those kinds of questions become more prudent to ask. So it is a gradual thing you have to build up to as a reporter, particularly one who's on a beat and around these guys every single day. But at the same time, I understand the frustration. I understand that fans are fed up with the amount of losing that has been going on, not just this year, not just the last year, but since the second half of 2024. It's been a long time now. And Jacob Calvin-Meyer, our colleague, tweeted out this stat today. The Orioles have now fallen to 500 in the David Rubenstein era, which, after getting off to a 91 win start to that era in 2024, that is certainly a eye-opening stat for me of just how far this team has fallen. And now just looking at what this product has become for the last 2 years, the sample size of this team being mediocre to bad is starting to get bigger than the sample size of this team being above average to elite.
Do you have any reasons for optimism for our listeners, for those of us who are scratching at something to cling on to, that this isn't just a total bust and a waste of several years? That the idea, I know that Sixers fans have talked about this for a while. You trust the process, trust the process, trust the process. Did the process fail? Is that, at what point do you feel like you look at the Orioles and say the process failed? Is it just like you fire Mike Elias? Like, is whenever he's done, and the fact that when you start over, is that the idea of the process failing? Or can you give us something to kind of cling on to that maybe makes it feel like it's not all doom and gloom?
Look, I don't like to speculate about people losing their jobs, and there's real human, ramifications to that are unfortunate. But as far as the future of this franchise, there's still so much talent. It's undeniable the amount of talent that is in that clubhouse. And I do think that, the starting pitching is actually, despite Trevor Rogers' struggles, trending in a better direction. We're seeing some really impressive outings from Shane Baz and Kyle Bradish recently. Chris Bassett has been better than he was at the start of the year. Brandon Young has looked good in limited sample. So I do think that there are things to be encouraged about there. The offense, it's just, and Michael Elias said it, this is supposed to be the strength of this team. He went into the season expecting the Orioles to score runs as well as anybody in Major League Baseball. And so far they haven't done that. So, there's a lot here of, theories and things like that as to why this team hasn't been able to put it all together. But I do think that, the discussion of individual contributions versus the sum of the parts, there's a lot to like individually. It just hasn't come together in a way that has been able to produce a consistent winning product. And it's being exposed by teams like the Rays right now. And there's certainly, as a question I asked on Wednesday, does this force you to reevaluate things and look in the mirror? And I think there is a lot of that going on right now, and a lot of things changing and being reevaluated behind the scenes as this team tries to find a way to save its season. But on that happy note, Sam, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap there, as I need to get through security so I can get over to my gate. But this was good stuff. Glad we could hop on. Any final words for the good people?
I just hope you have a safe flight, make it home okay, and I can't wait to see you soon.
Thanks, buddy. That is Sam Cohn. I'm Matt Weyrich. Thank you all so much for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, give us 5 stars on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, and give us a follow at Sun Earlybirds over on Twitter /X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of the socials. Thank you all so much for listening, and have a good one.